This is the Metro on WDET broadcasting from the Cass Corridor in Detroit. I'm Tia Graham.
And I'm Robin Vincent. Today on the program, Detroit's population is climbing.
But is the city ready for what comes with growth? And who gets to shape what happens next?
Plus, the sound of techno may travel continents, but its source is Detroit.
The Movement Festival reminds the world that techno's roots run deep beneath the streets of this city, and it happens this weekend.
And water remembers, and the Great Lakes hold it all. Our legacy, our mistakes, and maybe our last chance to get it right.
But first, the Metro has made it a priority to talk to solution-based organizations throughout Southeast Michigan who aim to fill gaps in society. Literacy rates in Michigan lag behind the national average, as we often talk about on the show. And the pandemic in 2020 did a number on students across this country. And of course, Michigan is no exception. So how are the gaps getting filled? How is the community coming together to prevent the kids from lagging? And how do we get adults involved too? A fairly new nonprofit has created a new home in Ypsilanti called Desenk House. Through the art of poetry, the organization uses the power of imagination to promote creative expression. Charlene Choi is the co-founder of Desenk House, and Paula Ortega is design coordinator and communications intern at Desenk House. They both join us now. Charlene, Paula, thank you for joining us on the Metro.
Hi. This is Paula. Thank you for having me here.
Hello, Paula. And Charlene, do we have you? Not just yet. Okay, so Paula, we're going to jump right into things a little bit with you and talk about just Desenk House and your involvement with Desenk House.
Yeah, so as you said, I'm a digital coordinator and communications intern at Desenk House. I've been with the organization since, I believe, 2024. As you said, also, we're fairly new to the community, but we've done a lot since then. So at Desenk House, I helped put together our youth programs culminating project, as part of our programming and our commitment to elevating youth voices and their art. Our youth get, to be published by our award-winning press, Desenk Books, at the end of each season through various modes and mediums, such as like a professionally printed set of postcards, broadsides, zines, podcasts. So we do a lot of things with publishing. And so basically, I'm just behind the scenes helping put these projects together.
And Paula, while we're speaking about some of the things that you do at Desenk House, I was browsing the website and I did actually find what you're talking about, that end of year project. And I want to read a little bit from what I found. This is Neil, who was 9 at the time. And this is what Neil wrote. This was published on Desenk's website. On a dark and stormy night, windy as the clock ticks midnight, the moon shines its brightest. The air is damp. The air is as still as it is silent, cold and frosty as the silence breaks as birds chirp and morning rises and night fades away. When I heard that from a 9-year-old, I thought to myself, what is going on at Desenk House? Can you talk a little bit about some of those projects that you've been able to work on with the youth?
Yeah, so what you read out loud just now was a project that we did in the fall. And it was literally the start of our youth programming, really. We were able to host this program, Roots and Wings. It's Roots and Wings for elementary students, and our Empowered program, which is for high school students. We were able to host both of these programs at the Ypsilanti Whitaker Branch Library. And that's really like where the magic started. It was just like a space and a really amazing, incredible, safe space and nurturing environment for students to just come and like explore, the written word and just explore their creativity and their self-expression. And one of our main focuses is poetry. And so we just encourage them to just sort of just play with words, play with their imagination. And, at the end, they were able to create these amazing pieces of poetry that one of them, which you just read out loud, Neil. Yeah, he was an amazing kid. And, we were able to just put together, we put together their writing in a postcard. And I helped, just create the design and format it. But really, it's all of them is their work. They get all the credit.
I was really just amazed by the work that was presented and published, especially from the younger ones who were like 5 or 6 years old. And some of this, the goofy things they would say, it was just really lighthearted, and it made you feel good to just see what's going on in a child's mind. But we do have Charlene now. Charlene, welcome to the Metro.
Hi. Thank you, Tia.
Of course. So, Charlene, you are the co-founder of the Zank House here in Ypsilanti. So give us a little bit of a background there about the Zank House being in Ypsilanti and why you all chose to position yourselves there.
Well, our founder, Steve Gillis at the Zank Books, has been doing incredible work with, youth for probably over 10 to 15 years now, maybe longer. Mind counting. Essentially, his roots being in the Detroit area and Ypsilanti, and we sort of got this incredible house, this access to this house, and our other co-founder, Amanda May Moore, who runs the gallery, is there on site every single day curating. We started basically, as Paolo said, in October, our fall program, for the first time launching with Flying Objects Youth Writing Initiative, who kind of creates all the curriculum, all these little prompts to kind of help the kids get in that space of exploring and just the time and space to play and focus at the same time. Just getting into a room with others who either come in with a love of language or not at all. And it's really remarkable to see.
And Charlene, just really quickly, though, because you've been the director of numerous literacy groups, you've had several youth poetry programs as well. What about poetry works when connecting with kids? Because it's something that we've been following here on the Metro. Literacy groups use poetry and spoken word very, very often to reach young people. So what is it about poetry that connects?
Well, yeah, I think there's this incredible thing about the precision and the, function of poetry. So Anne Carson who's a poet, has this line that I always think of, and it's words bounce. Words, if you let them, will do what they want to do and what they have to do. Mm. And I always think about that. I always think about how, for a lot of young people, literacy and poetry is taught in a way that's perhaps not the most interesting. And so there's another idea that I always think about as well, which is that poems cry out to each other from a great distance. This is Jack Spicer, that poems play together from a great distance. And this idea that, all of literature, but poetry specifically, because it's often much shorter than a novel, for example, you can really capture the imagination in just sometimes in one line, in one verse, one page. And so...
Yeah. And Charlene, before we get to the community that is Ypsilanti and poetry, because you blew my mind open when you told me, hey, Ypsilanti has a poet laureate as well. And I said, I didn't know that. So we're going to get into the Ypsilanti poetry scene in a moment. But I do want to bring you back to what you're just talking about, poetry speaking to one another across even generations, either time frames, whatever it may be. And you recently were the Zank House was a part of a national campaign supporting poetry and the U.S. Poet Laureate, Albert Rios. And the kids in the program performed his poem. We had a clip of that. It's called A House Called Tomorrow. And I just want to play a little snippet of the kids reading it.
You are not 15 or 12 or 17. You are 100 wild centuries.
And 15, bringing with you in every breath and in every step.
Everyone who has come before you, all the yous that you have been. The mothers of your mother, the fathers of your father.
If someone in your family tree was troubled, 100 were not.
The bad do not win, not finally.
No matter how loud they are.
We simply would not be here if that were so.
You are made fundamentally from the good. With this knowledge, you never march alone.
You are the breaking news of the century. You are the good who has come forward through it all.
Even if so many days feel otherwise. But think.
And this is just a snippet of the campaign there. Charlene, I want you to talk just a little bit about A House Called Tomorrow and why you felt important for the kids to read it.
Well, here's the thing. What's truly remarkable, what happens when we engage with a really great piece of writing. And I mean that to have the time and space to allow ourselves to do that, because we're so inundated with screens and clickbait and headlines and games and videos and things that distract ourselves from that engagement of the mind. So what happens when you're allowed to hear and listen or read a really good work that speaks to you, that sort of the genuine superpowers that are endowed. And it started with, traveling this poem, literally traveling from the first time, like I heard it in a very different context and passing it along through to some of the mentors and some of the writers in the room, and then passing it along to the students, and then the students passing it along to each other. And what we're sort of happening when a work engages, especially now more than ever, there's this thing that happens when students catch something that they, of any age, that holds their attention. This idea that we become superpowered, imagining entire worlds and landscapes, and we're engaging with empathy and experiencing complex emotions, characters, their plights, or even just following articulations of ideas. There's this reciprocity that's happening with these young minds. Like, it's really beautiful that a 8-year-old how much they can actually comprehend about the world that we don't have to pander to, that they have minds that can really, so much is happening when we're reading. That's like a superpower, and that we're all inherently gifted with. And so this idea of sharing poetry in a room that's like coming from miles and miles away from a writer who's in his 70s, who lives in Arizona, Alberto Rios, for that to sort of lift off in a room full of elementary students and high school students, actually, because they heard the high school students rehearsing it and, decided to also read aloud. Wow. So there's that kind of organic in the other room, it's happening, and there's an organic kind of mentorship that happens like very naturally when kids are allowed to work with one another at different age groups in the arts.
We're talking about the Zank House, a nonprofit in Ypsilanti that uses poetry and spoken word to promote literacy and community. Our guests are Charlene Choi, the co-founder of the Zank House, and Paula Ortega, design coordinator and communications intern at the Zank House. Now, Paula, I'm going to bring you back into the conversation because we were just hearing Charlene talk a little bit about the kids, of course, and them being able to connect and learn from one another and being around from one another, especially the younger kids with the older kids. So, Paula, you're, a recent graduate yourself. You haven't been out of college too long. You're working in this nonprofit space, especially within the arts and humanities. Why is it so important right now to be working within this space?
That's a very, very important question and thing to think about right now. Yes, I think the arts and humanities are critical to our development as human beings, and they always have been. Ever since, human beings, us, existed, we've always been creating to a certain extent. And right now, I guess it helps us to better understand our history and our context and our culture and the world, us, and all the people around us. And really, art is an really amazing form of communication and really creative self-expression that can help us build, self-confidence, identity, and a way, again, to connect with the world and with our peers, our mentors, our community. And it's an amazing framework to help us understand everything around us again. And like Charlene said, it's a really incredible superpower, in terms of poetry, to be able to convey such clarity and meaning through a few words as opposed to a lot. And it's really, really sad that right now, with the current times we're in, that the arts and humanities are getting devalued, because we know how important they are, and to us and to our development and all of that. So, yeah, it's really sad.
Yeah. And, we have about 2 minutes left or so. And Charlene, I want to bring you back into a similar topic and conversation, because we do see that arts and humanities are getting less attention, and we see federal funding being cut, and some of those programs may go along with it. So, Charlene, what do you see the role of the Zenk House, especially if we see some of these social safety nets going away?
Well, at the heart of our work is a very deep commitment to offering free youth programming, offering workshops, editorial experience, public reading, podcast production, publishing opportunities, and again, at no cost to participants. And this is just, from elementary writers to youth stepping into leadership roles, our programs are dedicated to cultivating voice and confidence, as Paolo was just saying, and creative expression through the literary arts. Our commitment is really not just to supporting writers and artists, teachers, students, cultural leaders, community builders, but just individuals, which really reflects our belief in the power of literature and cultural arts to connect people, to bridge differences, and to create meaningful change. These are vital times to do this work, and that's sort of the job of the artist, right? Even when it's, especially when it's challenging. And that's another kind of really beautiful thing Ocean Vuong just recently gave an interview. He is a very celebrated author, and he's worked with many of the nonprofits that I've worked with. And he said the other day in an interview, how do we, what was his sort of inspiration? And it's something about kindness, even without hope. Or I was thinking a lot about that in the last couple of days. Or another way to say pursuits, following your beliefs and cultivating your path, even in the face of adversity. I could go on.
No, honestly, I was just thinking now, we just talk about everything that's going on in the world, and you're saying, there's power in poetry, there's power in the spoken word and being creative, and right now we need that more than ever. I just want to say thank you to Charlene Choi, the co-founder of the Zenk House and Programs and Communications Director, as well as Paula Ortega, the design coordinator and communications intern at the Zenk House. Thank you both so much for joining us on the Metro, telling us a little bit about the Zenk House, and we definitely will follow along as you all grow.
Thank you so much, Tia. Thank you for having us.
Thank you, Tia. Thank you.
From the WDET newsroom, the EPA has lifted its emergency order on Flint's water. Administrator Lee Zeldin says the city has replaced more than 97% of the lead pipes that once carried water into people's homes, and that the water complies with lead standards. Michigan's Attorney General says Secretary of State Jocelyn Benson violated campaign finance law by using a state office building to announce she's running for governor in January. Benson says she planned to do that and only did so because it was too cold for an outdoor news conference. Coming up, Detroit's numbers are up. But beyond the headline, what does population growth really mean for the city and the region it anchors? We'll be right back on the Metro. You all stay right there.